Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are joined by Kathy Worotny and Dr. Suzanne De Froy as they share Kathy's story, which provides hope for survivors of trauma, and the circle of care. A holistic approach for healing unfolds, revealing the brain's amazing ability to heal itself through neuroplasticity. Testimonials include medical professionals who offer insight into the winding road of setbacks and growth. So welcome, Kathy and Suzanne. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
We begin our story with Kathy's going to talk a little bit about her accident.
This is my car crash that happened February 24th, 1993, about 10 to 8 in the morning. I was a teacher at a high school. I was turning off of an expressway onto a township road, and I was turning about 25 kilometers an hour, and a guy who was a university student, late for university, late for midterms, ran the light, and he was driving a Blazer, and it was a bigger car than mine. He ran the light and crashed into my passenger side. And I ended up 6 weeks in a coma. And I was in one hospital for six weeks. And then I was transferred to a rehab hospital. And I was at the rehab hospital until the end of July. So that was like from April until July. And I had to learn how to read and write, how to feed myself, how to dress myself, how to take care of my personal needs. And I was not a very happy camper. I had frontal lobe injury. I had injuries at the back of I had a closed head injury, which means that my brain bounced around many different ways within my brain, or within my skull. So the frontal lobe injury, my personality changed, and I used the F word from the start of the day to the end of the day, and probably in my sleep.
Why was that unusual for you, Kath?
It was unusual for me because before my crash, I was a sister of the Holy Names, and I was a sister for about 9 years, and that wasn't my personality to go around swearing. Actually, when I was teaching, my first 4 years, I taught religion, and I used to talk to kids about their language and to watch out, not to use the F word and all the swear words. So that's why it was different for me to be using that word.
So just a little bit of a background, as you both, all of us know, what's really important about Kathy's story. When I first met her, I want to talk a little bit about how we met. We met 5 years ago, and it was in liturgy, and she wanted to write her story, but she was unable to do so. And I had just finished a doctorate degree, and I retired, and so I said, I'll help you. So there's a little bit of research, because what we wanted to talk about is the fact that in the 5-year statistics say that 22% die within the first 5 years, 30% become worse. They either, they lose their family relations and they become homeless, they lose their jobs, they have a hard time finding support. And about 25% stay the same, but they're stuck. And there's only 26% improved. So my question was, okay, Kathy, then why is it that you found a way to improve and live a fulfilling life? And there's some really good news that's out there. The traumatic brain injury, a bill just passed second reading and they are going to call traumatic brain injury a lifelong chronic condition. So it looks like there's going to be support coming down the pike. That's the good news. And just a quick mention, this is a global phenomenon. I cite some research here that 69 million individuals are estimated to suffer from TBI from all causes. And as you know, it could be a stroke, it could be falling from a bike, it could be, domestic violence. There's many, many ways that people suffer from brain injury. When I started working with Kathy, her dad had kept meticulous records, and I'm basically encouraging everybody to do the same thing, especially caregivers. Start organizing yourself and make piles, because Kathy, I'd say that there was about 4 feet of data that I went through to try to make her journey into a story that people could relate to. So we started at the beginning, where she had a memory book. She also had a visitor book. And what the visitor book did when she was in the hospital was people would just say, you ate Jell-O today, or you said a few words. And it provided a real synopsis, a real image of her difficulties when it first happened. And she called being in the hospital the prison. She hated being in there. And the book shows her vulnerability and exactly what she did and said during that period of time, and how much compassion the caregivers need to have. And then she had to navigate being on her own in her house with a constant nurses and people, PSWs coming in. It was really rough. And then we have a period of transition where she starts to actually rediscover her resilience. And then she integrated, the old Kathy was gone, but she was able to find parts of herself, and she became a renewed Kathy in transformation. So that helped her reach her potential. I wanted to talk a little bit about neuroplasticity, because I too had a terrible thing that happened to me, and my psychologist recommended that I read Deutsch, 2007. And I love that book, because even though I couldn't remember 6 words in a sentence, he was able to put things in layperson's words so that you can understand that the brain can heal itself. And Kathy's way, when I was explaining it to her, because like I said, we worked on this for 4 years, and when I was explaining to her about neuroplasticity, she said, you know what? All I have to do is change the channel. And that's a little catchphrase that really helped her adjust, when instead of having an explosive explosion, she can pause and work on changing the channel. It's not easy for people who are living with people that have the drastic personality change. The good news is that resilience means that you can bounce back. And I have a few words here. Because we have, as a species, have survived, we're born with resilience. And the recent research, it's very recent, they're looking at how can people become empowered to be able to heal themselves. And the first thing was a journey into self-awareness. Kathy and I work on it all the time. We have agreements where she can tell me where I'm overstepping my bounds and she's overstepping hers. We stumbled on this major medical study, and I loved it, because it was the people who are living with the illness and the caregivers were talking about resilience. It drew on their experience and wisdom. It wasn't just based in basically kind of like a laboratory setting or a case study. I loved it. It really helped me conceptualize everything that happened in the story, that all these pieces of information that I had, because I was able to say, oh, there's an example of spirituality, and there is an example of hope. What does it mean to have self-care? And over here, we've got developing healthy relationships. She was never grateful for what people were doing. She just expected in the early stages for people to understand her. And she really had to work at realizing that people do not, including myself, I don't really know what's going on inside her head. The hardest thing was forgiveness, but we'll go on. She's going to give some examples of this. And then we have finding purpose. It was a nightmare for her to just lay in bed and look at the ceiling. She needed to find purpose. And Kathy's going to talk about that. That was life-changing. And embracing healthy thoughts. How do you change your perception? How do you shift from negativity to optimism? And there's little catchphrases like affirmations like change the channel that seem to work. And Kathy has a beautiful sense of humor. We laugh a lot at one another. I wanted to also in the data, her social support. She said, I could not do it. I had an amazing circle of care. And this is the first time I've really, we conceptualized this, because at first, Kathy always talked about her journey. And then I said, well, we're looking at what the doctor said, what the nurses said, what the therapist said, because we had all this documentation, what her friends said they had written in her journal. She had an amazing lawyer and insurance companies. She had some, not everything went wonderfully there, but she did have compassionate people. She also will talk a little bit about spirituality, and of course the Brain Injury Association, which we're one of our members. Like, you're connected to us here. So Kathy's now going to speak briefly about these different things. And at any time, if you there's a raise hand function, and there's only 4 of us. So if you want to say, you can interrupt us, okay? I think that would be helpful. But Kathy wants to talk a little bit about what these words mean, and that's what I did. I said, okay, this is what the researchers are saying. What does spirituality mean to you, Kathy?
Yeah, spirituality is an energy of life that holds our physical, emotional, and mental well-being all together. And I'm not talking religion here. Spirituality for some people could be a higher power. It could be positive energy coming from another person in your life, positive energy coming from people you know. And healing begins from a flow of wisdom. And my parents always taught me that something good will emerge out of a traumatic crisis. It took me a long time to figure that one out, because I felt like I was, being a sister of the Holy Names and dedicating my life to God in many different ways for a long time. And then I had this crash happen to me with so many injuries, and especially my brain not being able to do the things I did. I loved teaching, and I used to be able to do hundreds of things at the same time and never have any problems about what I did 5 minutes ago. So, yeah, I had a hard time accepting that this accident happened to me.
We asked different doctors can you please give us your take on what happened with Kathy? And this is a quote that Kathy is going to read for you. I'm trying to just move the screen over a little bit, pardon me. Can you do that? Brain injury is difficult, and there are various deficits that each person has. By not accepting what has been dealt, a person will become stuck. You, Kathy, have moved on by accepting what you have been faced with.
And it took me a long time to accept. The first step in my case was learning to get rid of my negative attitude towards pain and suffering in my situation. I had to learn to let go of who Kathy was before. I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't go back to where I was before. And coming to a realization that I had to develop a new Kathy, that helped me to look for new ways of being accepted, having self-esteem, doing something where I felt like, wow, I felt really good about doing that. So, hope is a healing energy that sets a vision in motion. Hope began when I started to look at a different Kathy. And this picture in front of you is a butterfly. The Brain Injury of Windsor-Essex County offers art class once a month to the survivors. And we were supposed to cut little pieces of paper and paste it on as a mosaic. And of course, my hands, I have a hard time cutting small pieces, and I was doing it backwards, and I was getting frustrated. So I threw down the pencil, the scissors, and the teacher saw that I was frustrated, and she came over and said, asked me what was the matter. I explained it to her. She said, there's other ways of doing it. She went away and came back, and she had markers, oil pastel, and crayons. And I ended up doing a mosaic butterfly, and I finished at the same time as everybody else. So that is my butterfly.
So just being flexible to change gives you hope.
Self-care is focusing on restoring parts of my emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. This here is a picture of my weight loss journey. And I started Weight Watchers way before my crash. And I never really continued with it because of being in the hospital. But when I came back home, I decided to go back and start working on my weight loss. So in the picture here, the very first picture with the orange shirt, I'm like well over 250 pounds. And when I got married, I was down to about 180. And the other picture, I was about 180. And then in the picture with the blue dress on, I'm around 160, 165. So I have more weight to lose, but I'm working on it. And here is a picture of me in front of a tree in a conservation area behind my house. And this tree reminds me of a grandfather. It has 2 eyes and a nose. And sometimes when I walk in the woods, I always stop, put my hand on it, and I talk to it. And I apologize to it because people write on it and deface it. But I love the woods, and I walk with walking sticks to help me to walk better because I have balance issues. So walking is one of my self-care techniques that I take care of myself.
And you're a good cook.
Thank you. Unlocking self-compassion. It's extending my empathy to myself when I'm feeling inadequate. This lock here reminds me of when I went to New York City, and there was locks on a fence where people went to a little chapel and got married, and they were given a lock, And then they walked outside the chapel and they lock this lock on the fence. So it's a fence of love. For me, I just have to keep, I can be so hard on myself. And one of my problems is that I can ruminate, and I repeat the same things over and over and over. And so part of my self-compassion is learning to say, it's okay, it's okay. And try the next time to not focus on the same thing over and over and over.
I'd like to jump in here. This woman right here, that's Dr. Carolyn Franklin, and she gave us 6 years of weekly reports, and that's where a lot of our the discernment happened, where we realized exactly how far Kathy had grown. And Kathy went back to school. She went back to grade 9 and 10 at the Adult Learning Center. So here was a teacher that was humble enough to go back to grade 9 and 10. And she ended up getting another degree at our St. Clair College. And this woman here is one of her best friends. And she was one of the only ones that could tell Kathy.
She was the only one that, when the nurses could not handle me anymore, they would call Emma and they'd say, Emma, you need to come here. And Emma would come into my room, and all she had to do was cross her arms and she'd look at me. And I'd say, I know what I have to do, Emma. You don't have to say anything. But Emma was the one that, she came to take me out of the rehab hospital for a day. No, she'd take me to her sister's cottage and spend the day with me. She also came to take me out to church. She also came and took me to visit some of the sisters at a convent. So I came a long way because of Emma.
Forgiveness, the research talks about forgiveness, but being able to know, feel, and understand what forgiveness really is. When I first met Kathy 4 years ago, she did not think that she could forgive the guy that destroyed her life, caused the crash.
And one of the things that I did, like for about maybe a year after my crash, I went to, besides seeing Dr. Carol Franklin, the psychologist, I was also seeing a priest at my church and helping me to come to terms with the hatred that I felt inside of myself. Not hatred for myself, but hatred for the guy that ran the red light and changed my life. I knew that my parents had started a civil lawsuit, and in my mind, I kept thinking, how can I use some of that money to harm him like he harmed me? I was thinking about killing him and harming him and hurting him, and it was like nonstop in my head. One of the priests said to me one day, Kathy, that guy did not get up and say to himself, today I'm going to destroy Kathy's life. And that made me think about becoming more compassionate towards him.
It took a long, long time. This has been a 31-year journey. And when I met her 5 years ago, she was still stuck on trying to figure out how to let go of the intense anger.
Volunteering has given me a purpose. I volunteer with the Brain Injury Association, and here's a picture of us. We have just been at the golf tournament, and My brother asked me to get involved with the Brain Injury Association, and he took me to my first meeting, carried my walker up the steps, and he waited for me in the other room so that I can meet other people with brain injury. And that has been my, like, I have met many, many friends from brain injury. And I really believe that it helped me to turn my life around in many, many ways.
I mentioned already that Kathy had gone back to school. So here's she's become very adept at the computer, and she reaches out to people, her nephew, when she gets stuck. Kathy is really able to ask for help. And this one here is one of the many certificates that she earned. And I'd like her to talk about her resilient tree of hope.
This is one of the trees that I painted in her art class. And you can't see it, but in many of the different colors, there's a resilient word in there. Joy, hope, courage, forgiveness, knowledge, wisdom. So I have all those words in there. And I love that tree. This is my unmasking brain. This is my mask. And the sunshine represents my life before my crash. And my life was bright and I had lots going for it. And there was it was warm. It was a good life. The ladybug, the other side is the ladybug. And if you notice, the antennas are upside down. And it took me like almost a year, and then I realized those antennas are upside down. I thought they were up the right way. But I chose the ladybug because a ladybug always looks for a way to survive the winter. So in December, they start looking for a place a crack to hide in. And if they find the right crack and survive, when spring comes, they will emerge alive. But if they don't find the right spot to survive in, they don't survive, they die. So ladybug,
I was going to mention she had a ladybug tattoo on her arm. I don't think you'd be able to see it, but
we wouldn't be able to see it. But it's a ladybug on a 4-leaf clover. And this is my mom and dad, and they're holding hearts for my cousin Mark, who was dying with cancer. My dad, this was maybe 3 or 4 months before he died, and he had COPD and he had cancer. So it was very hard for him to sit down and do that picture.
And he passed away just before we had our book published. But they were both very adamant to change your perception and try to look at things optimistically instead of dwelling on the negative.
And this is a collage that I made through Weight Watchers, and I took sayings that all help me to lose weight, like manage your time, eat mindfully, sleep better. And those are things that can help us in everyday living. But this is my weight journey. So the one in the red, I was very heavy. The one at the bottom, I was still quite heavy. And the one up on the other corner, I'd been losing weight and feeling a lot better. And the one at the bottom was my stepdaughter's wedding. And I felt so happy that day because I was wearing a jacket that I hadn't worn in at least 5 years. So happiness.
When I was looking through the Dr. Franklin's notes, she always seemed to give Kathy a short positive saying that she could remember. And that really helped her to think about it until the next week. And then they start talking about how that short little bit of a saying helped her, like plan for your success. She had a beautiful way of her to-do list, and also she has a calendar that she carries with her everywhere so that it helps her stay organized, and that makes her feel good.
Laughter and humor. That is just something that if we don't have that, it can be very depressing. This is my two clowns that I have from my collection of clowns. And I have about 25 of them, and I have them in my kitchen on top of the cupboards. And I look at them all the time. I have a painting in my dining room that has 100 faces of clowns. It was painted by Paul Murray, who was a very famous artist.
Yeah, he painted. He was from Essex County, from our neck of the woods. And this is a picture of Kathy that she actually got dressed up and gave balloons out to children. So it's another side of her. So that's one of her resilient tendencies that she rediscovered. And we all have resilient tendencies, whether it's a love of music or you need to find your own.
Mindfulness is being present to whatever is happening at the time. For me, like sitting quietly under the tree in my backyard, simply tuning into my senses helps me become more peaceful and calm. With all the concerns that sometimes I'm faced with, there are many ways to learn how to turn inwards and be mindful. It takes practice to be quiet because I feel like my mind is always moving. And this is a picture of me walking in the woods behind my house, Devon Woods Conservation Area.
So when we were at the conference in Barrie, I was sharing at the beginning before everybody signed on, but they had all kinds of different ways to find mindfulness. Mindfulness was a really big topic, but we're just suggesting that find what works for you. Whether it's, one lady did a presentation on forest bathing, something that is very popular in Japan, but I think Kathy does forest bathing, going for walks in the woods. And you can't see it because we've got the gallery on top of it, but here's a picture of Kathy working in her basement when she has a craft room down there, and she loves to make cards for a law firm, a friend of hers at Velocity.
Yeah, and sometimes when I don't like what my husband's watching on TV, I say, I'm going downstairs to work on my cards. Courage and perseverance. The picture at the top is a picture of me at Peggy's Cove, and I wanted to very badly. My cousin wanted me to walk on the rocks, and I was afraid. And so she said to me, I'm gonna just take your arm and I'm gonna walk it right to the edge. So she took my arm and she walked me to the edge, and we were able to look out into the ocean. I was able to look. So, and this picture down here, it says 0309. Well, there's 10309, and that's what it took me to walk 5 kilometers to raise money for the brain injury. I was the last person to cross the finish line. I was walking with brand new running shoes, and I had blisters so bad in my shoes. My feet were so sore, and the OPP were taking down the pylons, and I yelled, "I'm not done." And so they waited for me and they walked me across the street. And I was the last person to cross the finish line, but I did it. And then I went home and soaked my feet for days to get rid of my blisters. And here, the third picture is a picture of me being interviewed for the Brain Injury of Windsor Essex County Facebook website. And I was asked to talk about the type of programs that I've been involved in with brain injury. That was kind of difficult because I didn't have a paper to follow, so
You didn't have a script.
no. And so it was like I had to keep trying to pull on words in my mind so that I would remember what to say. But I did it.
Living a fulfilling life. Dreams can come true, just not the way we might expect. So Kathy had 3 dreams, and it was clearly documented right from the get-go. First of all, she wanted to get her driver's license. That is a story in itself, and she did get her driver's license, and it took 1.5 years, and but she got a driver's license, and everybody could not believe that she wanted to get back behind the wheel again. She also wanted to teach, and she had always imagined herself back in her classroom with the staff that she had assembled and working with the life skills students. She started a program that was duplicated in 3 other schools in our board, and but she now teaches in a different way, and that's redefining herself, renewing herself. And the last was, as I said, she wanted to take her story and have it written out in a book. And miraculously, I showed up, and the 2 of us have worked long and hard to create her story in a book. So dreams can come true. It's just not the way we might expect.
Yes.
And Kathy got married.
And I had 2 stepdaughters who are married, and I had 3 granddaughters.
And
2 of them are going to be 6 years old soon, and 1 is going to be 4 in September.
so the good news for everybody that we're really excited about talking about is Kathy is a living example of how neuroplasticity and resilience can help you live a fulfilling life. When it was so dark and she was filled with despair and anger and mad at the world and God and everything, just slowly but surely, as she became aware of these different positive traits that were buried deep inside of herself, she came out of the inner darkness into the light of possibilities.
This is a picture of me I painted that butterfly for Butterfly Lane. And Butterfly Lane is a lane that we asked the city if we could, well, first of all, we asked the people who lived in that alley and accessed their driveways and their garage doors if we could paint butterflies and scenes onto their garage door and onto the fences. So I made this butterfly, and my butterfly has, you can't really see it, but it has 2 wings that are not attached because I got mixed up with putting the stencil on the piece of wood, and I messed it up.
But it looked perfect to you.
But then I said to myself, that's kind of like me. Sometimes I feel messed up. I feel a little crooked. So that's my butterfly. 2 wings are not attached. And here is a monument that the Brain Injury Association of Windsor and Essex County has in the Riverfront Sculpture Garden. It has a male and a female hand, and both are holding butterflies. And my name has been engraved. I'm the last person that has been engraved on that. Because they're looking for a new person to do some engraving, and they're having a hard time finding one. But my name is the last one on there, and this is my husband, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, Kathy, for sharing your story and being so open and honest, and to you as well, Suzanne, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. This was fantastic. We appreciate you being here with us this evening. I'll just end the recording here, and then we'll open the floor.